Okay, level 2 is called factoring greatest common factors. To factor means writing a product factoring A, B plus A times C. So you would factor out what they have in common. So since both of these terms have an A, we would take out the A and then write what's left over in parentheses, so that if we were to distribute the A back in, we would get the same answer that we started with. Okay, we're going to go through a couple examples here. The first one's identify the greatest common factor. So all we're going to do is find the greatest common factor and state it. We're not going to worry about the leftovers in the first three. So if we're looking at the first one, we got 48 and 72. This is how I go ahead and find the greatest common factors between two numbers. I look at the biggest one and I think about, can this one, 72, go into 48? Well, I'm sorry, backwards, go the other way around. Can 48 go into 72? If it can, then 48 is the greatest common factor because 48 goes into 48, and 48 obviously goes into 72. But in this case, 48 does not go into 72. So we need to start thinking about other factors of 48 that do go into 72. So obviously, okay, we just tried the factors of 48, and then 48 times 1 is 48. The second largest factor of 48 would be half of it, 24. And that would be 24 and 2. So now I'm going to see, does 24 go into 72? So I would check that and do 72 divided by 24. And it gives me 3. So because it gives me a whole number, 24 is the largest factor between 72 and 48 because it goes in evenly into both numbers. Okay, now I've got some 3 terms here, and we've got some variables as well. So in our first one, let's just look at the numbers first. We've got 7, 49, and 28. So I look at the smallest number, here's 7, and I think about, okay, does 7 go into 49? Yes. Does 7 go into 28? Yes. So 7 is your greatest common factor. If it didn't, you would have to find another factor and see if that would go in evenly. Now comes times for the variables. So looking at the first one, we have 4 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the second one, we have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the last one, we just have 2. So much like our factors, we want to know what factor is the greatest in each of them. Well, in terms of variables, I want to know what is the greatest number of variables that each term has. This one has 2, this one has 5, and this one has 4. The largest amount that they all share, all have in common, is 2. So your greatest common factor is 7x squared. Okay. Let's try another one here. We've got 2 variables now and 3 numbers. So looking at the numbers, 42, 3, and 6. Look at the smallest number, which is 3, and see if 3 goes into 6. It does. Does 3 go into 42? Yes. So 3 is your greatest common factor in terms of numbers. Now in terms of variables, we have, in the first term, we've got 3 x's, 5 x's, and 3 x's. In terms of y's, I have 1 y, 2 y's, and 1 y. So I'm looking for the largest amount of x's a term has. First one has 3, second one has 5, last one has 3. So the largest amount that they all have in common is 3. Now it's for y's. We've got 1 here, 2 here, and 1 here. So your greatest common factor would just be 1y. So now that now that we've gone over those, we're going to now go back into factoring. So figuring out what our greatest common factor is and then writing what's left over after we take out those terms. So let's look at A. We have 5x and 20. So thinking about the factors in terms of numbers, the smallest number is 5. Does 5 go into 5? Yes. Does 5 go into 20? Yes. So your greatest common factor is 5. Now about the variables. This one has 1x, the second term has 0. So the largest amount that they have in common is no x's. So we don't have to state that in our greatest common factor. Now it comes time for the leftovers. So you're going to divide each term by your greatest common factor. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I'm going to be left with a 1x. And then negative 20 divided by 5 is going to be negative 4. You could just write an x, you don't have to write the 1x, but in order to check that if you're right, you can distribute the 5 back in, and you should get the same answer that you did in the very beginning, 5x minus 20. If you did, you know that you're right. So your final answer would be 5 times x minus 4. Okay, going over to B, looking at the numbers, we have 3, 6, and 3. The smallest number is 3, and 3 goes into 3. 3 also goes into 6, so I know 3 is going to be part of our greatest common factor. Now looking at the x's, the first term has 3, second term has 2, and the last one has 1. The largest amount that they share is 1. So 1 comes out. Okay, so my greatest common factor was 3x. So I'm going to divide each term by 3x. So writing my leftovers. Now if you start with 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, you'll have 3 terms in your leftovers, no matter what your greatest common factor is. So dividing 3 by 3, you're going to get 1. X to the third divided by x, you can see if I took 1 out that I circled, I'm going to have 2 left over. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X to the second divided by x is just a 1x, and that's what I have left over that I didn't circle. 3 divided by 3 is 1. X divided by x is 1. You can see that I have no leftovers after I circled the 1 that term has. Okay, so even if the greatest common factor is one of the terms, you still need to have a 1 as a placeholder. So your answer would be 3x times x squared plus 2x plus 1. So if you distributed the greatest common factor back in, you would get back to the original answer, original problem. And last one here. Okay. Okay, always looking at the numbers. So we've got 8 and 4. Smallest number is going to be 4. And does 4 go into 8? The answer is yes. So 4 is your greatest common factor. For your variables, you've got 2 x's and a y, and you've got 4 x's and 2 y's. So the largest amount of x's that they share is 2, and the largest amount of y's that they share is 1. So if I divide each term by my greatest common factor, write my leftovers, I started with 2 terms, I'm going to end with 2 terms. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. X squared divided by x, I should have no more x's because I circled both of them. Y divided by y, I shouldn't have any more y's left over because I circled the 1. Right? Negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. X to the fourth divided by x squared is x to the second because I have 2 that I haven't circled left yet. And same thing with y to the second divided by y. I should have 1 y left over because I didn't circle it. So your final answer will be 4x squared y times 2 minus x squared y. Okay, go ahead and try level 2s, practice them, make sure that you're checking your answers with the answer key or multiplying everything back together to see if you got it correct.